You're listening to Breakaway Wealth, the show designed to help you build wealth faster, think bigger, and break out of the herd. Now, here's your host, Jim Oliver. Before we jump into today's show, we have some exciting news to share with you. Our brand new online community platform is now live. Get access to free on-demand, in-depth training courses on topics like infinite banking, cryptocurrency, real estate investing, and much more. Just go to community.createtailwind.com. That's community.createtailwind.com, or check out the show notes of this episode to find the direct link to request to join the community. Now, on to the show.
Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and with me today is Julie Hawley. Julie, welcome.
I am so happy to be here, Jim. It's great to meet you in person-ish, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're part of the same mastermind, so I do know that a little bit about you. Julie, tell me, what do you do? And okay,
you were going to borrow. I love this.
I know. I was going to try to borrow it right away.
This is two amazing podcasters.
Yeah, tell me, say it again. Tell me how you did this.
I'm going to ask myself the question. This will be
ask yourself the
great.
question.
Listener,
Okay.
You love this. Okay.
Yeah.
What do I do, and how did I get started?
That's right, Julie. What do you do, and how did you get started? How's that? That sounded good, though. It just didn't come out of my mouth the right way the first time.
This is all collaboration. This is what life is. Life is all about supporting each other and leveling each other up. I love it. Well, what do? I have a brand, and this is kind of a cool story how it all came about, but I have a brand called The Conscious Investor. And it actually began with my own personal investing in real estate. And in my quest to find a better investment strategy outside of single family homes, because I felt really vulnerable, 1-to-1 ratio, 100% of my income dependent upon one resident. So I decided, hey, there's got to be a better way to invest in real estate, discovered syndication, and founded 3 Keys Investments and a podcast. And ultimately, in the process, this podcast has actually rebranded years ago into The Conscious Investor. And The Conscious Investor is now this overarching umbrella of this brand. So we focus on 3 echelons: health, mindset, and wealth, in that specific deliberate order, because, the sick man's last wish is dying man's last wish is to live and to live well. So we must care for the shell that houses our soul. And then we have to have our mindset in order, because if we've got a bunch of junk between the ears, we're really not going to be the best version of ourselves. And then the beautiful part is that the wealth comes with this. And so, the wealth can stem from all of this. And so the Conscious Investor really supports people in every facet. I actually coach people one-on-one. I'm getting ready to start something cool, some group coaching, which I'm excited about. And then I also have my investment firm, Even Still. So really, it's this beautiful ecosystem for people. And I have a different idea of wealth, but we can get into that later if we want.
Yeah, I want to hear about that. Let me kind of unpack some of the things that you said that so I love that what you said about the single family homes. And then I always equate that to buying a mutual fund or something, right? If the stock market goes down, your whole portfolio goes down. And especially if you got money in a 401k and it's all tied up in government regulation. But if you have 10 units and somebody moves out, it's not as bad, if you have a 10-plex, it's not as bad one person moving out as if you have all your eggs in one basket. So I love that. And obviously scaling and leverage is what it's all about in any business that you're in. And if you're a real estate investor, you're really in the real estate business, right? You're not just an investor, you're in the business, right? Now you could be a passive investor.
Preach that.
Yeah. And so I like to look at things. I run my family even like a business. I mean, our finances. I mean, we get a personal P&L every month. I run it like a business. So, I love what you said there. Also, when you do something and you realize, hey, you know what? Maybe what everybody told me about this, maybe it's not true. Nelson Nash used to say the majority's never been right about anything. And I believe that. So I love that you had conviction, which is what it takes, confidence and conviction, to go and say, hey, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. And then I gotta comment on what you said about health, because what's that? There's a quote that says something like, the poor man's dying wish, or it's like their dying wish. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you don't have health, you basically don't have any wealth, because, you're going to die. Right. And so I totally agree with you. It's funny. The more money you get, the longer you want to live. Right. I think that's kind of interesting. So tell me, what did you have a 9 to 5 ever back in the day, or what'd you do?
So yeah, this is a beautiful thing that God did in my life. And it took, I think, 20 years for, I think I say God braided all of my life together. And so my family background on my dad, he was a residential real estate agent, sales agent, as was his father-in-law, my grandpa. So we call him Gramps. So
Yeah.
I'm third generation on the real estate side of things. But honestly, I didn't have the strength that it takes to go out and to be that entrepreneur in early adulthood. And I followed my mom's path into education. And then guess what happens? Well, you know what? I'm there as a public school educator, and that's great because I believe in contribution. Whatever it is that you're doing, make sure that you are contributing powerfully in the world around you. Like, be where you're supposed to be, people. Okay, don't be where you're not supposed to be, even if it's scary. So here I am contributing. I started overachiever at age 22. I looked like I was 12. It was funny. People are like, "You're teaching our kid what?" And in that process, I thought, this is fine. I am going to be set for life. I'm going to have the government. I'm going to have the retirement fund of a teacher. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
Well, and then I can, pick up houses along the way. That'll be fine. Except then the government starts handing out pink slips. What?
Ooh.
I didn't know they laid teachers off. And so
I
that
didn't know
was
that
my
either.
reality check at age 25 of,
Yeah.
so am I going to trust the government with my future? And that's when I stepped into full ownership and agency of my life. And I said, no, I'm going to be in control of my life. And obviously, government's not going to take care of me. They lay teachers off. So let's go real estate. Let's go. So I stepped into full-time real estate sales, absolutely crushed it. It was great, but this is before the crash, like right before the crash,
Mm.
06, 05, 06. And people were unethical and they were nasty and it was bad. It was as bad as everybody says it was. It was bad. And I'm, I don't hate to say it. I was a whistleblower more than once because I'm like, I can't be part of this transaction. I'm not doing something unethical. I'm not going to have my reputation and my character tied and associated with whatever is going on here. That's not my gig. And so ultimately I decided, wow. And this is where I have more information on wealth. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that I could have a check associated with my name written on it and printed, because that's how they did it back then. And it's like, oh, that check and all those zeros, and there's a comma, and like there are numbers like before that comma, like multiple numbers. I didn't know I could do that. I mean, teachers don't get paid well. We're not well compensated. And there's a reason for it. And I don't think teachers should, but that's a different conversation. However, I realized I can have all this money, but there's a price tag to it. And the money buys comforts and luxuries and different things, but I also have to interface with these different parts, these different people. And let me just back up. I don't like who I'm becoming. And this is well before YouTube. Well, like podcasts are probably just coming about at this time. So we don't have the access to information that we have right now. And I did not have the people around me. I didn't know how to access the right masterminds and the right groups of people, right, to touch down. And my dad was phenomenal, like phenomenal people, but they weren't the people that were going to guide me into that version that I really wanted to become. So I called this school district back up, top district in California, and I said, hey, so there's humility in leaving a position. Hey, peace out. I'm going to go over here to real estate. And then there's humility that you have to say, you know what? Actually, that worked out really well. And if there's room at the inn, I'd love to come.
Yeah.
they actually were very elated and very quickly found a spot for me during the next school year. So I've had this really beautiful interchange of going, working and operating within real estate, within education. I've was blessed to stay home and homeschool our kids initially. I went back into education, and then I left education and completely started a firm, an investment firm. And that was that right there. I am confident was the last chord. God's like, here you go. This is why I did all of that. Because honestly, I needed to be tempered as a human being. And a
Yeah.
lot of us resent that. And we want to say no, but we want it now. We're like our little Veruca Salls in our hearts for Willy Wonka. And it's like, no, actually, you have to build yourself up internally. And every experience that you have, if you're willing to engage it, is going to develop you from the inside out and prepare you for where you are destined to go. But you don't get to go there until you go through these hurdles. And so I look back, and even though I didn't learn about syndication and private investing until I was in my 40s, which made me nauseated because I'm like, why didn't these commercial brokers tell me about this in my 20s? What the heck? I
Yeah.
mean, that would have been a game changer. And instead of looking at that in that way, say, well, what a blessing that I know now and that I have been equipped and I've been diligent with my life to develop skills that will support me in not just supporting my family, but helping others.
So, if I were going to tell that story, Julie, now that we're friends, I would say my friend Julie was a teacher, and she realized that everything that schools teach kids about money was wrong. And she decided to go teach adults that would have been taught the wrong thing their whole lives, how money really works and how wealth really works. And that's what she does now. So I'm
I'm
just saying, like,
borrowing that. You can
yeah,
have my question, and
okay.
I'm gonna swipe that.
You got it. You got it. Because I love that. You got to meet my friend Luke Neubauer in Louisville, Kentucky. Luke was a teacher, same kind of thing. This was like, well, what am I doing? I'm and then got into real estate. Now he's just killing it in real estate and just a super guy. So definitely somebody that you would like to be associated with too. Um, one thing that I like everything that you're saying. The one thing that, again, teachers, I agree with you. But you know what they do? I'm going to say the powers that be, you can call it whatever you want, right? Is they get you to buy into this lie about the pension. Okay. Now I
Oh,
have tons of
yeah.
experience on this. When I lived in Colorado, PARA, Public Employees Retirement Association, they had a
Mhm.
thing where you could buy additional years of service. So if you
Mhm.
bought those years of service, you were guaranteed like it was 15.8% rate of return. Because if anybody doesn't understand how a pension works, is there's a grid, and it's like your last, your highest paid so many years, and then how many years of service, and you go down on the grid and you say, okay, I get this percentage of my highest earning years, right? But you could buy additional years of service and it would change your payout in your pension. Well, we had a calculator back then, and very crude, that would show somebody the impact of that. So we'd have a teacher married to a doctor, or a judge married to, or a state trooper married to somebody who had money sitting there not doing anything. And I'm like, whoa, buy additional years of service for them. And assuming their marriage was solid, then it
Right.
always worked out well. That we did it so much that they changed the rules. And but this pension thing, right? They get us to buy into this lie that our jobs are go work hard. Teachers work very hard. I could not
Mm.
do that. For 20, 30, 40 years, save up money plus this pension, and then live the rest of your life and hope that you don't run out of money and do
And it's
nothing.
a shoestring. It's a shoestring
I,
regardless. Like,
I live in Florida. I see it every day. I mean, I got
mhm.
retired people from as far as you can see. So when I met Nick Costco, he was a UPS pilot. If you live in Louisville, Kentucky, that is the top 1% of people. Like, oh, you're a pilot for UPS? Like, wow, I'm impressed, right? He's making really good money by most people's standards. And he said, Jim, I've got this pension. And I said, oh, gosh, I'm sorry. And he goes, no, it's really good. And I said, no, it's like shackles. It's like this,
Golden
like
handcuffs.
it's golden handcuffs. They're not stupid. It's evil, but it's not stupid. And
Mm-hmm.
you are married to that. It's very
Mm-hmm.
painful, just like getting out of a marriage should be. It's very painful to get out of that pension. But I showed him like cash flow, not pension, how I could replace that cash flow that he was ever going to get in that pension in 5 years. And Nick, to his credit, 100% him, he 10x'd his income in, I don't know, 6 years, 7 years, something like that. And now he doesn't care about that pension, right? The pension is
Mm-hmm.
not in play. And so you did the same thing because that you could have bought into the lie. So Julie, just because I want to get onto some other things, but why, what do you think it was in you? What do you think you were taught as a kid or part of your personality that you didn't buy that lie, that you were strong enough to say, you know what, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm not doing it.
Well, there are a lot of things. I mean, I come from an entrepreneurial background, between my grandpa and my dad. So both sides, paternal and maternal sides, have strong entrepreneurials. And I mean, my lineage comes from Mexico. So I am a quarter Mexican. And I will tell you, the Kano side of the family, they came to the US and they worked in the fields and they learned English from a dictionary, and their work ethic, like their determination, is something obviously I speak about with passion and enthusiasm. Like I remember my great aunts, and it's like, oh my gosh, and my grandma, like just strong, powerful, independent people. And so I come from that philosophy already. Um, and really, in those early adult years, I went through some really hard personal knocks. I ended up finding myself in a bad marriage. I was in an abusive situation. And I actually did like the unspeakable and was the very first person in my family lineage to have a divorce. And I had to cross those bounds, which this sounds like we have to understand that our personal lives are directly correlated into how we approach and view the world. And honestly, that really just created, like, that was the final chord of, okay, my life is between myself and God. I like to be vertically aligned. And I will always collaborate and work with other people because it's a lot of fun, and we should do that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's me and God. And in this case, now
Yeah.
my husband and stuff of almost 20 years, right? So it's like really understanding at the end of the day, kind of like the dying man's final wish. Like at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I would lay there when I was going through this divorce process. And I just remember like incubating and just like laying in bed thinking, because you just discover all sorts of things when you go through, when you leave a bad situation, you don't even realize how bad it was until you're on the other side and you're looking back. And I would just lay there in bed and just sit and have these conversations with God that were so impactful. They impact my life to this day, where it's like, okay, I would picture, and if this is on video, it's like I'd picture myself just literally curled up in God's hand, almost like a puppy on a
Mm.
lap or something. And it's just like, it's all good. It's all good. Let's go. Like, game on. Like, I am not going to, if I'm given a second chance life, I am not leaving any chips on the table. I am going to go out in flames and I'm going to live it to the fullest, meaning I'm going to discover and refine my greatest contribution in this side of heaven. And I'm going to exploit that.
I love that. I was adopted, but I could be Mexican too because there's a couple of things. One, I live in Florida, and I'm sorry, but I've only found one good Mexican restaurant, and I'm from Los Angeles, so I'm used to being able to stumble on a great, and I'm talking great, because if you're not slicing the pastor off of the spigot onto the tortilla, then it's not a good
Mm,
taco. But
mm.
so I
Speaking
love
my
Mexican
lingo,
food.
lingo
Yeah,
over here.
so anyway, but I had a friend who was Jewish, and I said, I could be Jewish, and he goes, no, you're not. So I'm sure my friends that are Mexican, they'd say, nah, you're not, Jim. Um, but the other thing that you talked about, I was thinking about this the other day, is we do this Bible devotional, Nick, me, and there's like 15 guys, and we do it on YouVersion. We read the lesson, and then we make a comment, and we have all these comments, right? So there was one of the readings the other day, and he was talking about God as our father, right? Now, being adopted, everything, and you don't know my story, but I didn't really have a father figure or anything. And so, like, it's a hard concept for me. But I got this feeling in my head because at the family mastermind, somebody mentioned the book that I hadn't thought about for years. It's like 38 letters that J.D. Rockefeller wrote to his son, John, right? And I thought, wait a minute, if J.D. Rockefeller were my dad, the richest man in the world at the time, right? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
would think I could do anything because even if I screw up, he's right there. I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
I got the richest dad in the world. I can try anything. But I don't have that, but I have the creator of the universe, right? And so why would I fear anything? Like, why
Yes.
would I think, oh, maybe, you know what, Jim, you're not talented enough to do that. You're not what I got the creator of the universe behind me. So I shouldn't fear anything. So I love what you said about being vertically aligned because I totally agree.
And that right there, that's the fire. That's the powerful thing. An affirmation I write down every morning, the very first one I write. I read my Bible, I write down whatever verse stood out to me that shows me something about God and in our relationship. Like it's so cool. And then I write down these affirmations. And the very first one is I am forgiven, free, and a deeply loved daughter of the King. Start your day with thunder. Like there's nothing holding me back. I'm forgiven. Whatever is happening, it's all done. That's in the past because that can hold us back, which means I'm free. Man, and that freedom that we have is so magnificent. And then to think, to your point, I'm the daughter of the king. So I just put on this huge multi-day event for the very first time, and I was the
Yeah.
person behind it. It was my event, and I ran the show, and it's really powerful conscious investor growth summit. And that's what got me through it. It was completely a walk of faith. And when I would get so scared, I had people tell me I should not do it, shut it down, all that. Like I don't know. I'm supposed to do this, and I trust God, so I'm just going to do this because if He says, then I'm going to do that. And there's so much freedom in that. But to know that this is what it is, Jim. It's decoupling the outcome. So often we're tied to the outcomes, and we're like, oh well, it has to look like XYZ. I have to sell out every single ticket. I have to make have a net worth of X amount, right? We can apply this across life. I
Yeah.
have to have the right physique, the right this, the right that, and ultimate. So we're so tied to these outcomes. I was actually able to release myself from that outcome and say, okay, everyone else, their metric is, did you sell out? And
Right.
everyone has their own metric that they want to apply to my event. And I'm like, I don't know what the metric God is using. So
Yeah.
so the whole thing felt like Christmas to me. And if we live
Yeah.
life like that and say, hey, I can live, we're probably similar-ish in age where it's like, remember extreme sports, like we can live on the extreme and everything. Like I get to live out in the extreme. I get to go for it because I've got backing.
I'm pretty sure I'm a lot older than you, but I like that. I appreciate you saying that. You know what, Julie, I'm going to count that as when I'm going to ask you for the best advice because that was great. And I think that if what I want Heather, our editor, to do is put that as the best advice you've ever gotten is write down those three things, those three affirmations every day and have that attitude because
Mm.
that's great advice. So, um, hey, one thing I want to do before I ask you the final question is tell me how you work with people and how people can get a hold of you. And you talked about your live events. If you have one coming up, tell us when it is, and we'll make sure that this airs in time before that. People could come if they want, or how they interact with you, because your energy is infectious, and I think that what you're doing is really cool, and you're doing it for the right reason. So if I'm in real estate, which I am, I'm going to reach out and say, okay, hey, how can we work together? Should I be, so tell me how you work with people and your
Yes. So
coaching too.
yes, on the real estate side of things, we have Three Keys Investments. That's a website. It's all plural. It's all spelled out. No numbers. Just 3keysinvestments.com. And really, we're really supporting people in developing their personal freedom. A lot of people want this financial freedom and they confuse that and they chase after financial freedom and they bankrupt the best parts of their lives. They end up, having relationships that are fractured. So we support people in creating that best life. We do that through only one asset class. Well, technically two, but it's housing for humans. That's our buy box. That's where we're called to go. Lots of great places to invest in real estate, but that's what we believe in. So we invest in apartment complexes and assisted living communities across the Midwest, most primarily. I love the Midwest. It's great.
I do too.
It's such a great market. And then on the coaching side of things, I do work with people in a performance coaching fashion so that they can collapse timelines, discover their greater purpose, and really energize their life and get moving. Like, we don't need to live an imposter life or a fractured life. We can step into the fullness of who we're created to be. It's so much fun. And my coaching clients thrive and do just the most extraordinary things in the world. And it makes my heart happy. So you can head to IamAConsciousinvestor.com, which is an affirmation. So it's also easier to spell conscious that way. But yeah, head over to IamAConsciousinvestor.com. You can actually access all the investing from 3 Keys Investments, the podcast, The Conscious Investor, over 500 episodes, schedule time with me. It's a beautiful place.
So, again, a couple of things, gosh, I lost my train of thought on my question. I love what when you talk about like what you do and with your passion, it comes across. And so I get all these, questions in my head, but I probably get too many questions in there. But, I love that. I love what you said about the Midwest. I agree. Especially coming from California, and there's a lot of billionaires in real estate in California. So it's a great market if you're the right person for that market. I just don't think I am. But so I love that. All right. Okay. Let me ask you the last question, then maybe the other questions will come to me. It won't be the last question. But if God came down from heaven and only allowed you to read one book and that you could retain the knowledge from that you've received from one book that you've read. Gosh, I'm so good on questions today.
I love
this. What would that book be?
Okay, typically I would struggle to answer this question because my typical answer is this: whatever book I'm currently reading, because every single book we read should be transforming us in some capacity. Yeah. However, you were talking about Earl Nightingale. We both appreciate his works tremendously. I actually have another body of work that I love that sits in near proximity to my Bible. And that is Brendon Burchard's book, The Motivation Manifesto. And I read that, have you read it?
I have a friend who she is. Yeah. I have. She has so many notes in that book. It's unreal.
That book, I feel like that and the 4 Agreements should be required reading for every human who walks and lives and breathes, because however you are, if you're alive, you should read these books. And I mean, Brendon Burchard, he has a smile. You see him on social media and stuff. And you're like, oh, you're just like happy and stuff. And then I've been to his events in person, smaller scale events where you get proximity. Mm-hmm. He's such a grounded, real person. But when I read Motivation Manifesto, it changed my complete perception of him. I was like, oh my gosh, you did not mince your words. He says the hard things in there, like get rid of the toxic people in your life. He has a way of phrasing it that you're just like, why am I doing this? Why am I living in fear? Why am I, his first 3 chapters, freedom, fear, motivation, before he steps into the 9 declarations. And you can't read it without being impacted profoundly, regardless of whatever your belief system is. That book will change your life.
So I know what and I agree with you. I think it's awesome. I haven't heard that one honestly, I get the same books over and over again, but 4 Agreements, number 1 is, that book, just be impeccable with your words, which is, I'm struggling with being impeccable with my questions today. But
you're being true, though. You're being true,
but
so that is being
it's
impeccable.
just being me. I was a solid 1.2, 1.3 student in school so as a teacher, the kid that said, why do we have to do that for an hour let's do it in 5 minutes and let's go do something else. But it was, but money gives you choices give you freedom, right? So when people talk about wealth, you got to meet people where they are. So I always think, I know you think it's all about money. It's not, but money does give you choices give you freedom. And all we really want is we exchange our time for money. Some people do. And our lives on earth are measured in time. So therefore we're giving our lives to this job. Or we could buy assets and let our assets provide our standard of living, and we can have our own time back. We can have our lives back. And I'm passionate about people like you that are helping people do that. So number one, thank you for that. Any famous last words, Julie?
I would like to piggyback or do a little tag along with what you're saying about that exchange. And I actually measure life in heartbeats. So my dad was unexpectedly relocated to heaven, and heart disease runs in my family. And so I'm very much aware that there's a timer on the ticker, and you want to use every single heartbeat. That is a measure of a life well lived, like how we are using those heartbeats.
Well, I think that's a great way to wrap it up. They always tell me that, hey, this should be between 20 and 25 minutes. And I feel like I could talk to you for like 2 hours, and it's been 30 minutes. So even with edits, they're going to say, oh, you're over. But that's okay. So thank you so much, Julie, for being on. I look forward to having you back on the show, and we'll talk about a million other things, and I'm sure it'll be just as much fun. So thank you. And audience, reach out to Julie. You can tell by her energy and authenticity that she's a person that wants to help people and help people succeed. So I would encourage everybody to check out her websites and see if something fits for you. And we're going to wrap this up like we always do with the incredible words of Earl Nightingale. I love when I can't talk. Thank you.
Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about.
Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to hear what was shared on today's podcast. If you are looking to discover new wealth building strategies, then go to community.createtailwind.com. That's community.createtailwind.com to join our free online community and get access to free courses and in-depth training videos designed to help you build wealth and break away from the herd. Click the link in the show notes to access the community today. Thanks again for listening.